Hello there, and welcome back to the Outside Views live stream. It's been a while, but I'm quite glad I can start again today. And it's something I haven't done in some time, and so I'm still glad that I still remembered how to do them. And one thing I forgot was to set it on public much earlier so that you got the announcement earlier. I will remember that for next week. But today I asked you to send in some questions, and a few of them I will answer today, besides a lot of different topics on UK politics I will go into as well. But first of all, welcome to everybody and good evening for those in Europe. Good morning or whatever on the other side of the planet. I know there are people watching from many countries when I see the analytics of my videos, and so I'm happy to have viewers from all over the world, and everyone is welcome here. It's the first new live stream here on Outside Views since I had to stop doing them because I had tons of appointments, and I'm glad that I'm back, as I said, and I don't expect too many viewers today on the first one until everybody gets used to the live streams again like in the past. So it will be a nice little Gesundheit, Tom. Thank you very much. Will be a nice little group here that can have a chat and can have a look into some topics. And if you like, you can always use the chat. I have a look, and if you see me looking around, there are so many screens here in live streams, because I have to check that it's working and how much the delay is and so on, and that's when I look somewhere else. But let's get to some questions I got. And the first one I picked is, Verti, you know I answered you in the comments already, but I think that's one that we have to get over with because it's coming up so often. Because Verti asked, because of the recession in Germany, is the BMW i5 Touring still available in time? And it was always planned for 2024. The other models are out, and I'm not working for BMW, by the way. But the question came up, and so I gonna answer that one. And the recession has nothing to do with it. It's a minor recession anyway. And there's a point I said in one of my videos already. Germans, when they see that the economy is not doing as well as they're used to, they really have a habit of saving their money and not spending it. And that's what's causing the recession, mainly, that they all keep their money and don't spend it on the domestic market. So there's a little say that you probably at the moment find more money under German mattresses than what's other countries' GDP. And that's really true. People here behave like that. And as soon as there's a little shaking like the energy crisis last year, people are saving their money like hell. And so that is mostly the reason for the small recession we are in right now, but nobody here is really worried about that. After such an energy crisis, and especially when you go to the supermarket, I mentioned that in some videos as well, the prices are falling. They're not rising anymore. They are, on some products, are stable since the crisis really hit us, not as much as in the UK, but it did hit us. And then they are now falling. Milk got cheaper here. Other products got cheaper again. And so inflation is not where it's supposed to be. Our central bank also wants it at 2%, but it's going down. And you can see that it's gone down, and the prices are going down partly as well. So I'm not really worried. And ja, guten Abend. There are some people greeting in German as well. And so, no, I'm not worried. And Verti, in time when you need your next company car, you will get it if it's a German one. And I already answered to Tom, but I just want to say hi, Tom. We haven't seen us in quite a while as well since my live streams. And so thanks for being back. And as I said, there are not tons of viewers now on the first one, especially because I forgot the public part. But as I said, I'm glad that I still know how to do them and that everything technically worked when I started them. So I'm getting older as well. Nobody of us is getting younger, and I'm getting quite old soon. But let's that's something about live streams as well. They are sometimes quite helpful. I try to find the usual trolls. I gave some leeway in the past, to especially for Ellie to have something to play. But during the live stream, you see the ones you've forgotten, and then you can phase them out from the channel. So be nice in the chat, by the way. I know there will not be that much chat tonight on the first one, but always be nice and civil on my chat. Otherwise, you're gone very fast. This is a channel where you can have different opinions. This is a channel where you can discuss, but always in a civilized manner. And everyone that has proven not to be capable of a civilized discussion is not welcome. But everyone that wants to have a civilized discussion, especially based on facts, is always welcome here, even if you have different opinions, even if you completely disagree with me. I know some viewers who completely disagree with me, but have very civilized discussions here on my channel, which I love. And those people are very welcome here. But I also have a question from Ellie I just mentioned, and that is, do you think Starmer or Labour will make it to number 10 next time? And that is, of course, a little bit of a Nostradamus question, because you never know what's going to happen between now and the time between autumn 2024 and the beginning of 2025, when the election has to be at the latest. And Ellie added some comments on her question. And you're right. The Conservatives will decide when this election will be. They only have a latest deadline. But between autumn 24 and beginning of 25, they can choose when to do it. And they might choose to do it if Labour does anything really wrong. And as you also said, some people are really angry about Starmer from the Rejoiner side. That he doesn't even consider bringing the UK back into the customs union or the single market. And I said it in one of my videos, the UK has less access to the single market than even Norway, especially because they're in the EEA, or Switzerland, or even Turkey, or even Ukraine. Even Ukraine has more access to the EU single market than the UK does. And obviously Starmer doesn't want to change it. With always what he's saying, he wants to get a better TCA with the EU, but he never says how he wants to do that. The only better TCA he could get is with either joining the customs union like Turkey did, or via try to get into the EEA and on that way get into the customs union and the single market. But he's ruled that out. So how does he want to get a better deal with the EU? Because everything that's not in the deal with regard to trade in goods would mean very close alignment with the EU regulations. That is what the Brexiteers always denied. And the other choice I don't see, because trade and services, there's no interest in the EU to give the UK more in trade and services than they got in the TCA, because that's just a one-sided benefit. The EU doesn't benefit if they give the UK more access for their services, but it's the main one part of the main income of the UK is their services. But the EU isn't really interested in having them, because we have our own services companies here, and they don't want this if there's nothing in return. And the only thing in return would be far more opening of the British market. And that only can happen via ways that Starmer rules out. So that's why I'm often talking about Labour at the moment, that I'm quite angry, because they are not really operating with the full truth here. And that's what makes me angry about them. Guten Abend ins Bergische Land. And yeah, that's but about Starmer's chance of joining, depends. Do they make big mistakes until the next election? Will there be any miracles on the economy side, which I don't expect that would help Sunak? But you never know what happens. We had an election. I sometimes watch the reporting on elections evenings from elections in Germany a long time ago, because that's quite interesting to see what happened there and why this happened. And there was one thing that short to an election where everybody thought that the Bavarian prime minister would win against the chancellor in the general election, and it was very close in the end. But shortly before, something happened on the international stage that made the chancellor look better than usual, and he won by a very narrow margin, although everybody expected him to lose. But he won because short before the election something happened, and that can always happen. That can also happen in the UK, and so I wouldn't bet on Starmer being the next prime minister, but I wouldn't rule that out either, because at the moment everything, if nothing really bad happens, it looks like he will. If he can do it without a coalition government, I also don't know, because the first past the post system is always given the party in lead a good chance for an absolute majority in parliament. Even if they don't have an absolute majority of the votes, they get an absolute majority in parliament. So it's not impossible for him to do that. And yes, I know why he's telling all the things he's telling now, because he wants to win back the red wall. We all know was a lot of Brexiteers there. They wanted Brexit. For their sake, I hope that they are part of the bunch of people that are saying now that Brexit was a mistake, although they were in favor of Brexit before. That's why he's doing it, but it's not making it better, because something that is really on a very low level in the UK politics at the moment is the truth. And the people in Britain deserve a government that brings back more truth into Westminster. And that's why I'm so angry with Starmer at the moment. Then let's have a look quickly on the newcomers. Phil, there's an interesting question in the chat right now, which I might quickly answer. It's nothing to do with the channel here, but our live streams were often going a bit astray. Oh, hi, Uwe. Yeah, I know Uwe is in a customs union with the EU, but they are. So they have more access to the EU single market, or better access to the EU single market than the UK does. They are not in the EU customs union, but they have a customs union. There's a nice chart by a German newspaper I've seen where all the different relations with Norway and everything were put quite nicely. I have a look if I can find that for another live stream that really makes it very visible about the relations the EU has with other countries, and Turkey is in one of these squares, and the UK is out of it, like a lot of countries aren't, especially here in Europe. But I wanted to quickly go to Phil. It's not a topic of this channel, but as I said in my live streams, when our questions are coming up, we go astray from time to time, and the Ukraine war is a topic for the UK as well, because the UK is one of the biggest supporters of the Ukraine, and that's where I always say something positive about this government. I always have criticism for, and the the problem with the question is what is the German view on how the war in Ukraine is going? Well, there is no German view, first of all. If you mean the government, they of course have a view. The majority of the people in Germany have a view, but we do have minority views here on the war and what we are doing and how the war is proceeding. But we can only judge what we can usually verify. I will, on my magazine's channel, I will concentrate a little bit more on the Ukraine war in the next weeks, because there are so many trolls out there now. I see this when I just mentioned the Ukraine or Russia, what numbers of trolls are just popping up everywhere. And that's why I'm concentrating on the magazine's channel a bit more on the Ukraine war in the next time, because they are trying to bring a lot of fake news into the world. And I just want to bring what we know. And on those videos, I always say when we cannot independently verify these information we get. And with that, I don't only mean the Russian side, I also mean the Ukraine side. As you all know, the first thing that dies in a war is the truth. And of course, both sides will give out information that's not accurate for different reasons. The only thing is that right now, after everything I heard, at least I can say that I cannot believe anything the Russian side is saying at the moment, but I cannot believe everything the Ukrainian side is saying. Sorry, it's quite dry here because, as you saw in my videos, it was really hot here and I still haven't gotten the full heat out of the studio. It was still spring and Germany was more than 30 degrees and that's not normal. But climate change, I guess. But now it's colder and so it's getting better. But the dryness is still here in the studio. With the Ukraine war, the majority of the Germans, of course, is supporting what our government is doing, and most of Parliament is supporting what our government is doing. And I am supporting what our government is doing now most of the time. You know that I was, if you've seen my other channel, you know that I was very critical of our current government in the beginning of the Ukraine war because of their hesitation, of their denial of doing things. But in the meantime, they made a U-turn and did some really good things that were supported by the vast majority of Parliament. Only some extreme right-wingers and then some extreme left-wingers didn't agree. But the majority of Parliament and most of the democratic parties are behind this. And so that's a good thing. And the majority of the people here is of the same opinion. And we all hope that one day there will be peace. I don't see peace in the near future, especially because what we know about Putin and his intentions, and he couldn't reach any of his intentions there. But I'm glad that the Western civilizations are supporting Ukraine and will continue to support Ukraine. And Germany will do the same. So let's have a look on the chat quickly again. There's a nice question from Charogate. How would introduction of a German 5% hurdle PR-style system help Britain against the first past the post overall? Well, right after the 2019 election, I made a video where I did the calculations and made some charts what the election would have looked like with the German system. Maybe you go through my videos back to December 2019 and have a look at that video. It would have made a very big difference. there wouldn't have been an absolute majority, of course, and the results for some parties would have been quite different. And I suggest that you have a look there if you're interested in that topic. I really made the calculations. I made some charts there as if it was under proportional representation, and with the handing out of the seats and everything. So it was quite different. And that's really an interesting question, because it would make it completely different. You can argue about all electoral systems, of course. You can argue pro and con, first past the post, proportional representation, or like we have here in Germany, the mixed system, which is in a big discussion at the moment as well, because the government is trying to reduce the number of seats in the Bundestag with what I think some very questionable measures, but that is something the Constitutional Court will decide about. And that's the difference on another point that's very important between the UK and Germany, for example. We have a written constitution. That helps a lot with many things. And because we have a written constitution, we have a constitutional court, and they have the last say about this. And that makes a big difference. And so I'm quite fond of our democracy, because I know that even with some weird people that might have the majority in some parliament, they cannot do whatever they want, because we have some safeguards in place. And sometimes governments really don't like this. We see it in Israel at the moment with Netanyahu trying to take power away from the Constitutional Court. But our Constitutional Court, if they rule, it is the rule then. What do you have here? Okay, now some more viewers. That's really nice. Good evening to everyone that joined a bit later, and nice to see you. And Tom also said that a Ukrainian friend told him that they prefer when people just say Ukraine and not the Ukraine, because the Russians use this the always to minimize the importance of the Ukraine. Yeah, but unfortunately that is a habit when I talk about the United Kingdom or the United Kingdom all the time. Then it slips into everywhere. I hope they don't take it too bad. But there was another question handed in before the live stream. I had a community post, and one for my members and patrons, and one later for everybody to hand in questions. And there was one about one of the most famous topics on Brexit, and that was fish. Yeah, you know, Jacob Rees-Mogg said the happy English fish, or the happy British fish, that's now much happier after Brexit. Well, but the fishermen are not much happier. And there was a question, is the rejection of EU regulations the reason that English fish and meat have so much difficulties entering the EU market? Could that have been avoided? Well, first of all, everybody knew during the Leave campaign already, and the fishermen could have known this if they would have listened, that they cannot just sell every fish they catch into the EU without any problem. If you're not part of the EU, the market is not just open for you. And like everywhere in the EU, the fishing grounds are shared to a certain extent. And if you're getting out of the EU, take back those shares, as happened with the TCA, and they will reduce the quotas for EU fishermen that can go to English waters or British waters. Of course, that will have an effect on their access. And if they cut down the regulations even more, of course, food standards are one of the biggest bones of contention in all the negotiations between the EU and the UK. If they move away from the EU regulations on food standards, they will have problems to sell anything to the EU in that regard. And I think Uwe, who's also online, said that recently. We will not even feel that too much because if you go to German supermarkets now, which had a lot of British foods there, they are gone. There's one supermarket, a very big one here in my city, because we had several big British garrisons here. They had tons of British products in that supermarket. The last time I went there, there was almost nothing left, and that didn't only have to do with the British troops leaving after German reunification, because a lot of Brits stayed here. My uncle is one of them. He married my aunt while he was stationed here, and he stayed. There are a lot here that would like those products, but they're gone. And when I look in my supermarket around the corner here, for example, the most I see on whiskey, for example, is now Irish whiskey. The number of Scotch whiskies is reduced now. Most I see is Irish whiskey. And it's a lot the same with the many other things. And a lot of those things we were used to from the UK are now produced in Germany. You probably, many of you will know Cadbury's, for example. They have some nice chocolates as well, if you like it sweeter than the usual German stuff. What I can buy here is now produced in Hamburg. Greetings to Uwe. And friends from the UK are visiting in 3 weeks again. And one of my friends likes cider. And the only cider I could get here is produced in Germany. Yeah, it's apple cider and so on, and it's produced in Germany. It's not imported from the UK anymore. In the past, I bought UK products here, and now it's produced in Germany. And that's happening with a lot of things here. And that you can see on our supermarket shelves. They were just exchanged with other stuff, and in cases of whiskey, cheese, and so on, just with Irish stuff. That is easy because Ireland is still in the EU. Oh, they're still on the electoral system. So, but I was with the fish and came to the food standards there. Sorry. Oh yeah, that's my Project Reality mug. You can't get it anymore. It was from my 2021 collection, I guess. But I still use them. The other one is one is coffee, one is water. The other one is Brexit means Brexit. That was from the first year I did this. But the slogan on the mug is still true. I just want to make a little test if it works via this thing here, because it's annoying me for quite some time. You will see what I mean. No, it's not working. That's the fun thing. You can put in the comments, by the way, if you know why my iPad is reversing the exclamation mark, but then I just try it here and see if it works. I just want to try if my Nightbot is working. Yeah, but for some reason my keyboard is not working. I love technology. And for some reason no. I really have to find out what happened. Yeah, that's when you restart and have put everything to work and try. Nope, it's not working. Yeah, Nightbot. Nevertheless, let's continue. I just gonna find that out for next week because I set it up. Another question that brings me to a little bit of a longer topic was about the CPTPP everybody was talking about and the accession of the UK to the CPTPP. And there was a question, how is the UK's membership of the CPTPP evolving, by the way? Haven't heard about it for a while. Yeah, that's first of all because there are still some meetings I'm sorry, just confused by a comment. The second one looks better. Okay, don't get it. No, but there will still be some meetings, but there were some very interesting things about the accession of the CPTPP where nobody was talking about, especially on the Brexiteer side. We're talking a lot about EU regulations, about that Britain wants to get away from all those EU regulations and they don't want to follow them. And that was one of the reasons for leaving the EU. And then, before I get to the official stuff, and I've got tons of paper for this live stream again today, there was one very interesting thing I read. As I said, tons of paper. That I read. The accession process, chaired by Japan, required the United Kingdom to reach agreements with the 11 CPTPP members. By the way, that's Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, Peru, New Zealand, Singapore, and Vietnam. But about this chairmanship of Japan, the interesting part was that Japan insisted that there will be no exceptions for the UK if they want to join. That the UK will have to follow almost every single one of the rules of the CPTPP, because obviously in the negotiations they tried some opting out like they got in the EU, especially Margaret Thatcher was the queen of getting exceptions from the EU. But in case of CPTPP, that's not the case, because Japan insisted that they don't get it. And so I still am quite curious to hear, especially the leading Brexiteers, to comment on this. But I haven't heard the slightest from them about this. They're always praising the CPTPP, but never mention all that's coming with it. And about what's happening, they are always saying in a very short time they will get all the benefits and so on. That's not true either. I'm just looking for one list. I think it was even from the official one. And the UK will have to change regulations in the long run as well. The CPTPP contains much stricter rules on state-owned enterprises and so on as well than, for example, even the EU. And so it's quite interesting that they still wanted to join this after saying so much about the EU. There's my list. But there's one important thing about the whole CPTPP stuff. It's not going to benefit them immediately at all. Not to talk about given as much as they lost by leaving the EU. That will not happen with the CPTPP at all all experts are in concert in their opinion that this will not equalize the losses from leaving the EU even close. And it will not do too much immediately either, because I got the good lists here, for example, for their access. And there is a quota on beef, for example, at the moment. And that will be raised, so increased over the next 10 years. And there are far more of those. For pork, it is the same. For chicken, it's 10 years as well. And there will be a permanent quota on chicken after 10 years of 10,000 tons. So they don't have full access there. The same as with long-grained milled rice and from other countries. There are a lot of things on sugars, for example. Sugar will remain subject to certain rates. Duties will remain in other countries on many things. So there's a long list where you can see all this access stuff on the government side itself. So if they're always telling you something, check it on the government side. And there's a list for all the member countries as well, what they will get. And that's the publishing from the UK government already. There will be some extra quotas for Canada, for example, for cheese, but there's not full access. Or there's staged liberalizations on dairy products in Chile. There are some, the whiskey I mentioned earlier with Malaysia. There's a tariff of around 80% at the moment, and that will take another 10 years until this tariff is gone. So Scotland will not benefit from it right now. And that continues. So you can have a look through the list of countries if you're interested. It's on the UK government website when you just Google CPTPP. So I've got tons of pages in case there were questions about this. But it's not the all-curing contract they always wanted. And the biggest one they always wanted, they never got. And that was the one with the United States. And the United States are still making it very clear that a free trade agreement, especially because of the Northern Ireland situation, is still far away. And hi, Ellie. Found your way to us as well. I already answered your question, so you have to rewatch that part tomorrow to see what I answered on your question. Are you having some fights again about the topics, Ellie? Oh boy. Tom is asking, did Liz get her Beijing pork markets? Yeah, there's something very interesting because, no, of course she didn't. China is not part of the CPTPP. They are a candidate, but they are not a member yet. And we will see if that happens, because China would have to follow those regulations as well. And I don't see it happen yet. But at the moment, they don't have it, no. So Ellie is here, and I see a lot of Bavarian flags, as I'm used to. But good evening to everyone that joined later. And good morning, good day, or good afternoon, good evening to everyone watching this live stream later. I quickly have to do something because, of course, my computer always wants to do an update while I'm doing a live stream. You will remember Boris Johnson, will you? And There were news about Boris Johnson again, but the news were that they were talking of people around Boris Johnson, or confidants, how they like to say them. And the group is around the former cabinet member Nadine Dorries. I make a pause there before I say also Jacob Rees-Mogg and Priti Patel. But Nadine Dorries, wasn't she the one that resigned from Parliament hoping to become a member of the House of Lords and didn't? Well, the Privileges Committee, you remember that one, that's what they and Boris Johnson called a kangaroo court, really hit back now, because Dorries, Rees-Mogg, Patel and others, in overall it's 10 members of Parliament, are not allegedly anymore, because they already said that, have really put pressure on the committee members. And you remember the majority in that committee that gave the report on Boris Johnson are Tories. And they put real pressure on them. And now they have really complained about this behavior, and that I didn't want to skip. There was just a short message on the German news channels, but I didn't want to skip that one. So everything around Boris Johnson is not, let's say, over. A lot of people are expecting him to be back for the 2024 or 2025 election. We will not know when this will be, but we talked about this earlier. And a lot of people are expecting Boris Johnson to be back at the time. And to be honest, I do too. I do think that he might run in a constituency where he just moved to, if the Tories let him, and that depends on how much power does Johnson still have in his party. It didn't look that good on the vote in Parliament on this report, but you never know what happens until then. You know that Suella Braverman is still putting a lot of pressure on Rishi Sunak with her extreme right-wing stance on the refugees and so on. And so she's on Boris' side. So, and there are a lot of them still there with a lot of influence. And don't forget the grassroots, the members of the Tory party, why ever, are still in a majority on Boris Johnson's side. I seriously cannot understand anymore how you can be on his side, but the majority of the party members are. So I don't see him gone yet. But talking about Suella Braverman, I already mentioned it this week, but it's an important topic I don't want to leave out on this live stream this week. And that is the Asylum Pact with Rwanda. Most of you will have seen my video on this pact, and that the appeals court now judged that Rwanda is not a safe third country and the UK are not allowed to send refugees there. And this was a real hit for Suella Braverman and the other extreme right-winger Tories that put immigration on the forefront of everything. First of all, it's just a made-up problem. Because if you look on the number of refugees arriving in the UK, that is, from a German point of view, seriously, and my German viewers know that, it's just peanuts if you compare to how many people are arriving here. And on the other hand, the biggest problem she has is that her system for the processing of the asylum applications doesn't work. There's such a backlog there, but instead of working on that, she wants to block the immigrants. It's always fun when the immigration problem is coming from countries that don't have an immigration problem. All the countries in Europe at the moment, and I include the UK, of course, because it is in Europe, that are shouting the loudest about invasions and all this nonsense are the ones that have the least numbers of refugees arriving. And don't come with the 45,000 that crossed the English Channel last year. 45,000 in a country of, what, 65, 66 million? In the meantime, that is not a big problem, especially when you have a shortage of workers. And proper people that have a right to asylum can take up a job. So where's the problem? Maybe you can train some people you need for those jobs. No, but now they're looking in a lot of other countries, like since the EU citizens don't come anymore, they look in countries all over the world to get in workers. So they need more immigrants and not less, despite everything they are promising the whole time. But that doesn't make this less dangerous, what the right-wingers are doing there and what the right-wingers are doing everywhere. And they are popping up in every country. We have them here in Germany, fortunately not in one of the leading parties. Even if the German AfD has in the polls some quite high results at the moment, that is the majority of those people are not on their side because of their manifesto. They're just on their side to protest against our current government, which is really not doing a good job, especially in PR. What have you done? Quickly need to have a look. I had to freeze some messages because YouTube thought they were not appropriate. No, but there's no problem. But yeah, no, that's what I meant. The countries with the least refugees have the most racists for some reason. It's the same here in Germany. You have the most or the loudest votes against foreigners in communities or municipalities where you almost have no foreigners at all. And that's the same with countries. And of course, I talked about this in one of my recent videos, that of course you have to make a distinction between different kinds of immigrants coming to your country, between asylum seekers, war refugees, and just economic immigrants. And the treatment is different in a legal point of view. But still, you have to process them accordingly. And it was very interesting to hear, because I said, if you remember, that people that have a proper asylum reason, they can stay, and they will probably stay their whole life here. War refugees have a right to come if there's a war in their country, but they have to go back after the war to rebuild their country. And economic immigrants can only come if we need them. And someone in the comments wrote that I sound like Nigel Farage or whatever. I'm sorry, but that happens to a lot of people here in Germany as well. Why some people are afraid to talk about the immigration at all. Because as soon as you say something else, but everybody is welcome, then you are immediately an extreme right-winger. No, you're not. And of course, all democratic parties have to discuss this topic on fact-based arguments. And they should not leave that topic to the extreme right-wingers. And we need a fact-based discussion on this issue. And with all criticism on our current government I always have, the starting point of this EU asylum compromise they are trying at the moment is something good. Sorry, almost talking for an hour. And we have to discuss this topic. It is impossible that everybody in a bad economical situation come to our countries here in Europe. That is just impossible. And so we have a lot of laws who can come, who has a right to come, and who doesn't. And that's where we need to go. And that's how we deal with everything. It will not work to say everybody's welcome. That is just unrealistic. And I know some left-wingers here as well that would, I don't know, crucify me for saying what I am saying about this on the normal distinction between the different kinds of immigrants. But that is reality, and that's where we have to get to. But, and that I'm saying about countries like Poland and Hungary and the UK, people with a real asylum claim that are really in danger, they have the right to come and they have the right to stay. And war refugees have the right to come for as long as this war goes. They have the right to come here, and we must help them as much as we can. And that is what the right-wingers don't want to accept. Except in some cases, there's something we saw that was what really got me thinking. Was we saw the example that when white war refugees come, there's no problem, they're welcome as much as anybody else. But if they're not white, they're not welcome even if they are war refugees. And that is something that cannot be. We have to treat all war refugees the same. Nevertheless, I didn't want to get you down, but I wanted to bring that up because I was called a racist like Nigel Farage on my channel was a new. I never had that one before. Usually some people that are not regular viewers always tell me that I'm an extreme left-winger or something, only because I'm criticizing the Tories. I've got old news for them. I am a conservative politician myself, a voluntary politician, so not like certain people I have to report about that get a lot of money for this. I don't. But I do this for my community, and I like to do this for my community. And there are things you see right in front of your door, and that's the nice thing. People were, just as a little anecdote, were always scared at night to use the zebra crossing here in my borough where I live. They told me, because the zebra crossing was too dark, the cars didn't see them or oversaw them and didn't stop and so on. And now, only, and that is something that our civil service is usually not doing that fast, but just after a few months, there is a completely new light posts that haven't been there at the zebra crossing, new signs for the zebra crossing to make it more visible and everything. And that's just because I just wrote one bill proposal, and that's it. And there you see what you are doing for your community if you are doing voluntary politics. And that's why I like doing this. It's a voluntary thing, like being a member of any club. But I can make decisions. I can pass bills on stuff like that and see that it helps people. And that's what I like. But I'm in a conservative party. But that still doesn't forbid me to criticize conservative people. Also people from my own party. And criticism is a good thing. I think that's going to be the last topic for today. I don't want to take you in too much on the first one. But I don't want to leave it out. The law on the demonstration rights, or now I have to say the limited right on demonstrations, are in force now. And from now on, the police can do what I talked about in the other video, that they can just stop people from demonstrating, even from walking slowly somewhere. Or like we had it on the before the coronation or during coronation of King Charles III, when they just assume that they might disturb the public order, they can arrest them. And that is now in force. And so that is something that worries me as well in the UK. There's limitations and acting against democratic rights. And there we are back at the non-written constitution that is there, which complicates everything from my point of view. But if somebody would try this in Germany, a lot of people would be out on the streets doing something against it, and a lot of politicians would be in parliament doing something against it. Because I know how annoying this is. We had a demonstration here on Mondays for years, every Monday. And it was always at the time when I had to be, when my session in the town hall was finished from my city council faction meeting. And the only bus I could take had to come from the route of those demonstrators. And I was annoyed, of course, because sometimes, or quite often, I couldn't get the bus because they just dropped this bus because they couldn't get through where I had to get it. And so the bus was cancelled. And I was absolutely annoyed about this. It was not the fact that this were mostly extreme right-wingers, but here in Germany, everybody has a right to peacefully demonstrate. There are some regulations that you have to announce it to the police beforehand, and they can deny it under very certain circumstances, but there are very high hurdles for denying that. And so they had the right to demonstrate every Monday. Even they were demonstrating, from my point of view, for complete BS. And they were talking complete BS. But it was their right, and that is what a demonstration, what makes a democracy. We have to stand those people, but even those people have the right to demonstrate as long as it's peaceful and they stay within the law. It's the same with Extinction Rebellion. When they start this gluing stuff and so on, I'm of the position, that there's a matter for the courts. But if they do peaceful demonstrations like Fridays for Future did a long time, and they were blocking a lot of roads as well that annoyed people, but it was their right to do so. And we have to let them do this. And so I'm of the opinion that they cannot be stopped from doing it. And that is what's happening in the UK now. And that's something that worries me, because especially when we see around the world, and even in some European countries where people try to damage the democracy, to get more control over the separation of powers, for example. That is where it gets dangerous. And I'm saying this from a country where long before I was born, exactly this happened in my country. And a lot of Brexiteers always love to talk about World War II and how they saved Europe. Won't go into detail into that now, but we all know here, and we learn this in school, how those guys got into power. And that is something, to a certain extent, I see in many different places at the moment, and unfortunately it is working again. And that is what worries me. And that is something where we all have to be very vigilant, and we all have to stand up against. But I will not finish with that. That was a little bit too serious. And I couldn't have a look on the chat, by the way, in the meantime. Oh, hi, Junie. Haven't seen you for a long time as well, because I wasn't doing the live streams. And hi, Roseanne. It's interesting to do the live streams again. I will do them more often from now on. I try to do them on most Sundays. Sometimes it won't be possible because I have appointments, for example, as the deputy district mayor and so on. So not every Sunday will be possible, but I will try to do many of them. And I don't care how many people are watching on a live stream, because I just like to interact with my viewers in person as well, so to speak. Still missing one I was expecting today, but Murgi, if you're watching later, I can say it here in public as well. Congratulations to the birth of your son. I didn't want to skip that one. And so I definitely understand when you're not here today because you're busy, and all the best to your little family. And we talk soon anyway. All of you who were joining me today, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this restarted live stream, and I'll see you in my next video or on my next live stream next Sunday. Until then, enjoy. I hope your weather is good. We have some more rain now, which I'm not angry about. I'm working inside too much anyway. But I hope you have better weather. If you now have holidays already, my state here in Germany was the first one with the summer holidays, so the schools are out already. But I'm working, so I'm not going on holiday. But I hope you have a nice time, and I'll see you very soon. Auf Wiedersehen.